and micro businesses. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Ranking Member Graves, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Again, my name is Keith Hall, and I am a small business owner. That's what I do, and I'm very proud of that. On behalf of the National Association for the Self-Employed and the 250,000 micro business owners it represents, I'd like to say thank you guys for your commitment to small business owners everywhere. You guys really do make a difference. I don't want to be overly dramatic today, but I want to talk about commitment. I've been fortunate enough through my association with the NASE to see the commitment of thousands of small and micro business owners, both to their families and to their businesses. I've also been extremely lucky to be able to see the commitment to those same families and those same small businesses from this committee, from you guys. Today, I'm here to ask you to continue that commitment. I know you guys have a tough job with lots of challenges, trying to help people, trying to help the economy, trying to find new ways to meet the needs of so many people, and then trying to figure out some way to pay for it all. I know that's not easy. The tax code has always been an effective tool in helping you guys to meet those goals, not just funding the government, but encouraging or discouraging activities and actions. And I believe Congress has used that tool well. But a number of those tools are scheduled to expire, as we talked about. Bonus depreciation options, increased expensing under Section 179, accelerated recovery periods, as Mr. French had talked about. All of those things have been extremely effective at creating jobs for small business and have contributed greatly to the economic recovery that I believe is underway. These tax incentives show a commitment to small business that shouldn't come to an end. So the real question today that we need to evaluate is whether or not we want to continue that commitment to small business. The country finally seems to be seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. Taking away these incentives that clearly are making a difference seems to be the wrong signal at the wrong time. Now, I could spend my whole 5 minutes on talking about any one of those areas, but I'd like to concentrate on just one, and that's the alternative minimum tax exemption amount. I want to talk about this one in particular because I think at the end of the day, this cost really is levied almost exclusively at the small business guy. The original idea behind the AMT was to prohibit the taxpayers with the most resources at their disposal, the wealthiest of Americans, from taking advantage of loopholes in order to avoid paying any tax at all. However, the effects of inflation, the growth of earnings and expenses wasn't taken into account. Now, Congress has recognized this over time and adjusted the exemption amount to keep track with inflation, but now that adjustment is scheduled to end. If we allow that adjustment to end, then the tax burden for many Americans who had no increase in earnings from year over year will be paying more tax immediately. The same level of earnings, but more tax, a penalty. And why? Many would pay the extra tax simply because they live in a state with a higher than average state income tax. Others would pay more simply because they have a larger than average family. Clearly, that was not the intent of the AMT when it began so many years ago. And ending that provision now would punish the people that the original AMT provision set out to protect. Here's the real kicker. Even if the AMT system does not result in any additional tax, it still has to be calculated. Allowing this provision would force many Americans to do the math, even if they don't meet the test and end up paying any tax. So the AMT requires a completely different set of rules. Now, this committee particularly has continually promoted the need for simplification in the tax code. Yet here is a single topic that results in a completely new tax return, a second tax return, a second set of records, a second tax liability, and a second set of headaches. The instructions to the AMT form actually says, and I quote, "Therefore, you need to refigure items for the AMT that you've already figured for the regular tax. In some cases, you may wish to do this by completing the applicable tax form a second time." Really? It's 2 times. Now, the very concept of having a second set of records, a second set of tax forms, a second set of calculations goes to the very heart of the need for simplification. Again, even if no tax results from the AMT, a system that requires 2 calculations is a tax in itself. And worse, it's a tax that doesn't even generate any money for the Treasury. And without this increased exemption, many more small businesses will be stuck in this trap. So getting rid of the AMT altogether would be my first choice, but that may not be an option. At a very minimum, the exemption amount that is included should be indexed to inflation, and this fallback should not be allowed. Now, my most concerted point here is that the wealthiest of taxpayers will still be affected by the AMT regardless of this exemption amount. But those taxpayers who've had no real increase in earnings, no other resources to call upon, those are the small businesses and the individuals who will pay this price. And I know that wasn't the intent of the AMT, and certainly not the intent as we consider these expiring tax incentives. The bottom line, keep these incentives. Keep the commitment. Thanks again for the chance to be here, and more importantly, thank you guys for your commitment to small business.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. And if I may, I would like to address my first question to Ms. Burstein. For the first time,